Hi, and welcome to Mark's Motivational Podcast. It's great again to be joined by a brilliant author on the podcast tonight again. And her name is Jaya Viswanathan. And she's an author, she's a neuroscience scientist. So I'm really looking forward to talking to Jaya on the podcast today. So you're very welcome along. Thanks for coming on to the podcast, Jaya.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm really excited to chat with you and be a part of your movement and hopefully be a part of your listeners' journeys.
Brilliant. No, thank you so much. So we'll probably start off the podcast tonight. If you want to just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and the great book you've written. We talked a bit briefly before the show,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds brilliant because working with neuroscience and training the brain is very something I'm very interested in. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, me too. So, two peas in a pod here.
yeah,
Absolutely. It'll be my pleasure. So I am trained neuroscientist. I'm also an engineer. So after finishing my engineering, I did a master's in neuroscience and then a doctorate in neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience. And then I did a postdoctoral fellowship, and then now I currently work as a contractor within the National Institute on Aging in neuroscience. And so, I've been in the lab doing research experiments, trying to understand how our brains actually work, how we're processing information, multimodal information, visual, auditory, all of that, and then processing it in sort of this black box, which we know very little about, and
yeah.
hopefully we'll know more and more through the years. And then how do we then generate meaningful behaviors and actions that help us thrive in our world? So that's my educational and professional background. And on the side, I'd been doing art for many years. I picked it up in grad school, and I had created just for myself, whatever I'd see under the microscope. I found it very beautiful, or like these beautiful histology images that you might see in textbooks. And so I had created a couple of these paintings for myself to hang up in my apartment. And then I had friends over, colleagues over, and they were like, "Oh, you got to keep going. These
Brilliant.
paintings are fantastic." And so I had come to a point where and the third part of this narrative, sorry to go back, is the fact that as a scientist, I'd always, and I still do, I believe in, that what we do is really gather knowledge for the collective good as scientists. And something is lost when scientists don't actually communicate that back to
Mhm.
people, because most of science is funded through public funds,
Yeah.
right? So excuse me, it's funded through taxpayer money, it's funded through generous donations. But then often when scientists do find something interesting, it's more often than not written up as technical publications in journals where there's a paywall and all of that. And so if you, as an interested public layperson who's not necessarily got a scientific background, is interested in like what's really neuroscience, what's happening in research, it can be a little bit of a challenge to get to that knowledge. So once I had these series of paintings, I decided to put them together into a narrative about how the brain works, but also beyond that, like how the brain has actually evolved to do these amazing complex computations, but for curious adults, but also children, because it's also a visual format with colorful, rich, colorful paintings. And so the structure and the narrative of the story is really, or of the book really is, we, our brains give us superpowers, right? So like, but not just us, but all the animals around us. Animals can do some pretty incredible things, and usually much better than humans can.
Yeah.
um, and so that's the narrative there, where like how um owls can hear so well at night, and they can like almost turn their heads not quite 360 degrees, but around 270 degrees around, to precisely locate sounds and things like that. So really going into like some of these why and then how, so like why did animals evolve those? Because of their um, habitats, because maybe they were living in low light environments, maybe because they were nocturnal, maybe they live in polar environments. So like based on their needs, brains have really evolved to do some incredible things. So that's the setting of my book, Baby Senses.
Baby senses, yeah. No,
Yeah.
congratulations. You said you
Thank
published
you.
it a year ago. Is that correct?
Less than a year ago, I
Less than a year
published
ago.
it in
Okay.
April of this year, 2023. Yeah.
Right, yeah. That's what. And where did the journey begin for you with your writing? Have you
Yeah.
always been a writer yourself? Have you always dabbled in writing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think writing has been a really big passion of mine.
Hmm.
Ever since I can remember. I think it's just of expressing things that made sense to me. It came easily, it came naturally, it came more easily than art, actually. Art is something that I picked up as an adult, but writing I've been doing since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've written fiction, I've written a lot of communication pieces when I was in grad school. For example, I wrote um, a piece on the use of cognitive enhancers in college campuses when I was at uni,
Okay.
and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. And can I ask you as well, how's the experience been for a first-time author getting your book self-published? How did you
Mhm.
find that yourself? How did you find that journey?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. Thank you so much for asking. I
Yeah.
think, it's the thing actually that I struggled with the most,
Okay.
because I was really coming from such a different field. Like
Mhm.
I mean, I'd been exposed to publishing, but academic publishing is very, very different
Okay.
from book publishing and popular publishing. For one thing, when you're trying to publish an academic article,
Mm.
your grant usually pays for it, right? So
Okay.
when you
Yeah.
have a research grant, there's funds allocated to publish research findings.
Mhm.
That's just part of the research enterprise. I think there's also a lot of patience required, which is admittedly not my strong suit. But I think the thing that helped me be successful was a kind of a growth mindset, if you
Mhm.
will, because I came into this not knowing much about it and having a finished product. So I didn't at all do any research about publishing itself. I just had the paintings already. I did a couple of exhibitions in the DC area where I live.
Yeah.
And then I put it together, and then I started emailing agents,
Mm.
literary agents. And, I didn't email that many and I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I had spent about 6 months writing and illustrating and revising the manuscript.
Mhm.
And and then I'd spent about 6 months looking for an agent. And when that didn't work, I just stopped looking for an agent,
Yeah.
because I was like, I felt for me that it was not a worthwhile investment to spend more time looking for
Yeah.
an agent with a finished product sitting on my computer, and one I felt very strongly about. Like
Mhm.
again, I didn't do this for money. I didn't do this for because I have a full-time job. I
Yeah.
really
I know
did
what
it
you're
because
saying.
I
Yeah.
felt like I had this product that would get children excited about science
Brilliant.
again,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Great
and
stuff.
that's what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, I ended up then self-publishing, and then of course I jumped into self-publishing without maybe too much of research into it, and so it's the whole thing has been a journey, and so definitely lessons learned for next time.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm happy to chat further if you have specific questions.
Yeah. No, congratulations. Like the book looks
Thank
great.
you.
Would you mind showing people watching on YouTube, going to be watching this on YouTube? Wow, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is
Baby
Baby
senses.
Senses. This is
Yeah.
the front cover. So these are some of the animals that are highlighted. So there are a total of 16 animals that I talk
Well,
about.
okay.
And
Yeah.
so I'm going to open a couple of pages if
Brilliant.
that's
Yeah.
okay.
And if you're happy as
So
well, sorry to cross you, Jay, if you're happy as well to maybe read a little bit of the book for people, it'd be a real treat.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Yeah. Thank
let
you.
me show you a few and then read.
Yeah.
That would be great. I would
Yeah.
love that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So the book has really got, like, I would say, four parts,
Hmm.
maybe five, but essentially there's a short introduction about um what brains have evolved to do. And then there's a picture book section, which is really for young children. And so the picture book section, and I'm going to open one now, there are three different sections. So one of them are what's traditionally considered human senses. So, for example, hearing, vision, smelling, tasting, all of that. So things that are traditionally human, but that animals have evolved to do much better than us. So, for
Yeah. Right.
example, yeah, here are some owls who can hear much better than humans. And then here's an image of the neuroscientific image of a cochlea that
Oh,
is
wow.
our hearing organ.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so I hope you can see that.
Yeah, I can see
Um,
that
and
good.
then
Yeah.
and then it goes into excuse me, some internal sensing. So a lot of people don't think about it, and some people call it like the sixth sense.
Mm.
But we actually have a really rich, not just humans, a lot of most animals as well. We have really rich internal sensory organs. So, for example, even if we close our eyes, we know that we're not upside down. Right. So we know where we are oriented in space. We know if
Mhm.
our hand is clenched or not. Even if we can't smell it, we can't hear it, we know exactly where we are in space. We know where our muscles are, and our tendons. So there are all these internal organs, and then there's also like the gut-brain axis. So that's been something that people are researching now. Not We don't quite fully understand it yet, but there are these strong mechanisms by which our stomachs actually send signals up to our brain,
Mm.
things like hunger, things like fear.
Yeah.
Uh, and a lot of it is hormone driven, but at the same time, so these are all internal sensory mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
And so here is one of my favorites, and I'll probably read from this
Brilliant. Yeah.
later, but they're penguins.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is something called the carotid body on the, I guess it's your right.
Yeah. Yeah.
My left, your right.
Yeah.
And so the carotid body is what actually mediates something called the diving reflex.
Mm.
And so, for example, I go into the fact that penguins, even though they have lungs and they breathe air and not water, uh, they actually go on these really long dives, and they live in these really cold Antarctic environments,
Mm.
where they dive for like 10-15 minutes to get fish and other food for themselves as well as their babies. And so their bodies have, and their sensory systems have really, internal sensory systems have evolved to kind of monitor really well the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in their blood. And then when it gets too low, they actually switch mechanisms to conserve heat, conserve energy, so those dives can last a lot longer than, we humans, we can't last more than a minute or so
No.
without breathing when we're underwater. So some of those like internal superpowers, and then I apologize again.
You're okay.
And then I go into like some of these exotic systems, or things that we don't see very often in the natural world, or some animals have evolved. So, for example, here you see a pit organ, a pit snake. And pit snakes have something called a pit organ right here near the nose,
Yeah.
near the
Yeah.
eyes. You see a black spot.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
if you look inside, that's what it looks like, at least some of it. And so what it does is it actually helps to do thermal imaging of
Okay.
their environment, so they can basically know heat signatures, instead of, and the cool thing is that that we actually have some kind of heat sensors as well, because we're able to tell when it's a little bit hot, when it's
Mhm.
cold, when we eat something hot, too hot,
Yeah.
when we eat something too cold and we get a brain freeze. So we certainly have those.
Mhm.
But snakes, at least these pit snakes, have actually evolved that to a much, much next level, next level,
Yeah.
where they're now able to map their entire world in heat instead of light.
Wow. Wow. God.
Right. And so it goes, and so there's 16 animals like that. And so I'll leave the rest for suspense, but I'm happy to read a little bit from the penguins
Can I just say the
that I
illustrations are really, really good, Jaya? Really, really
thank
good.
you. Thank you
Really
so
nice. Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Really good.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. Thank you.
And so this
So
is basically this is all the work done by yourself, Jaya. This is all. Yeah.
absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
I worked on it. Oh, and then I forgot. So at the end, I included a pretty um, large like glossary. So this is really for the adults.
Yeah.
So every
Okay.
system that I talk about in the book, although I don't, yeah, it's just text. Every system that I have illustrated in the book,
Mm.
I go in the glossary, I kind of expand upon it in terms of the science, but also like fun history facts. So it's still for like a lay audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little bit more sophisticated for than for like a 6 year old or
I
7 year old,
understand.
right? So
Yeah.
it kind
Yeah.
of goes for example, I do talk about bats. Bats and dolphins, they can echolocate. And then if you like flip to the glossary, I talk a little bit about how sonar technology was developed during World War II, using the same kind of principles that bats and dolphins have evolved to again map their environments using sounds instead of light.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's great.
So, yeah.
It's very, very educational for for maybe teenagers and like what age would you kind of put it at yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really great question. And when I originally wrote it, and I think a lot of people forget that, excuse me, that learning is also social.
Yeah.
So I had really, really intended it to be like family centric, like
Right. Yeah.
something that, or a classroom centric. But really, when I first wrote it, my vision was really family centric learning. So I tried to like put that in. I tried to make it to my best ability interesting for anyone who might pick it up, right? Like, so any age.
Yeah.
So very young children, that's why I had like all these very colorful images as well. So
Yeah.
very young children might not understand that they're looking at cells, or but they might understand that they're looking at penguins or spiders or whatever, the animals. Still be drawn by, and a lot of the animal imagery is quite intuitive because it's always these children talking to their parents. And I'm happy to like give an example when I read a passage.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then, so the glossary, I really tried to make it very relevant to day life.
Mhm.
And so the picture book part of the reading level, I would put it kindergarten through like middle school.
Yeah.
But then, so the glossary is something that older siblings can come back to and read,
Yeah.
or read with their younger siblings, or parents can
Yeah.
read,
Yeah.
or grandparents can read. And I try to like put in fun facts. So for example, there's also bees. Bees are social insects, and they're
Yeah.
fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Mm.
And they have a social hierarchy. And insects are tiny, so their brains are tiny. They don't even technically have brains. They have something called ganglia, which are just groups of cells.
Mhm.
And so for a long time, people thought that insects were only capable of like very reflexive kind of actions. So for example, if you like come at them with a swatter, they're gonna fly, right? Like it's very like reflexive. Just like if someone tried to poke your eye, you close it or you move away, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not a lot of thinking involved.
Mhm.
But social insects are kind of throwing that for a loop, because um, not only do they have like pheromones based, very sophisticated signaling where they have these social hierarchies where there are worker bees and soldier bees and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
anyway, queen bee and this bee. So they have really sophisticated hierarchies, but
Mm.
um, when a queen dies and another queen takes over, um, the hive can choose to rebel
Wow. Yeah.
against the new queen, right? So they're like fun facts
Hmm.
that are not just interesting to kids, in my opinion. And I think there's always like a kid in all of us. At least I like to think so.
Yeah,
There's certainly a
definitely.
kid in me that
Me too.
gets really, yeah, really excited about nerdy, fun little facts.
Hmm.
So that being said, I really tried to make this kind of interesting for the whole family.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That's really, really, I love that idea. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, so Jay, I'd love if you
Thank you.
could maybe read it. No, you're great. If you could read a passage out would be great. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is the passage about penguins.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah,
So let's see. This is the first time I'm reading a passage out loud. So
yeah.
thank you for the opportunity. And if I start blushing, it's real. So thank you.
No problem.
So Papa, Papa, said the baby emperor penguin, the tasty fish are in icy waters. You dive so long while you can't breathe. How do you find food for you and me? And it's accompanied by a picture of the penguin and its baby.
Wow, yeah, great stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
So the dad replies, "That's our special skill, nestling," replied Papa Penguin. "I hold my breath to dive and get the food we need from icy depths. Carotid bodies, check my blood and tell my brain to reduce the air that I need when I'm in the sea."
Wow, that's great. Brilliant. Yeah, I
Thank
love it.
you.
It's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I tried to make it a little like rhyming poetic, and then I have the glossary that kind of goes into what carotid bodies mean, where they're situated, and then um, so I can read a little bit. Uh, so 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 for example, I say as a big okay. So the carotid bodies play a critical role in informing the nervous system, maintaining homeostasis, which is steady state,
Hmm.
in the respiratory and cardiovascular systems, as well as initiating immune and metabolic responses to these chemical changes in the blood, which is what they're monitoring. So, as a result, the carotid body has actually recently garnered interest as a potential target for therapy in disorders of these systems, such as hypoxia and obesity. So, people are actually trying to figure out if they can somehow target the carotid bodies to to treat hypertension and obesity and hypoxia, which could be quite interesting if
Mm.
they're successful. Yeah,
Wow.
so like that's a little bit of like tidbit fact,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
but then there's also like some of them, like I said, like the bees, they have more
Mm.
a little bit of Star Wars or something
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
with the rebellions. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's absolutely brilliant. Thanks for reading that because, you know, because a lot of this stuff is great to learn for any age, like you say, and to learn it in a fun way in a book is because we all love reading stuff that's fun, and the pictures look
Yeah.
great as well with it. So, well done to you, Jay. It's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, Mark. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the support.
yeah, no, great stuff. And can I just ask as well, in your writing, to kind of what I know you're really interested in neuroscience, and that's what you
Hmm.
do. But what would you say kind of keeps you motivated when you're writing your book and even your
Mm,
your other work, like based on when you're in college, like what kind of keeps you motivated in that
yeah.
respect?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question. So personally, I think I'm very driven by a service mentality, a public service mentality, and that's actually why I got into science. I really wanted to help people. So, excuse me.
Right, okay.
Sorry. Anyway, I have a dry cough. I apologize. So,
Don't feel
um, and so that has always been a factor. I got into neuroscience because I initially I was just fascinated by what makes people, individuals, kind of think different from each other. I think around the age of 8 or 9, um, there's a phenomenon where we have this theory of mind emerge, which is the idea of person X thinks differently from me. And so you can start formulating sentences like, I think that she thinks of this as Y, whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
so those kinds of compound structures emerge around that time. But in a more realistic way, it's when you start observing that human beings were not automatons, right? Even dogs have personalities. Like when we look around us, there's so much individual variability. But if you look at genetics, if you look at all of that, we have very little difference between individuals' DNA. So a lot of these differences are quite curious. How do they emerge? What are the mechanisms by which people make complex decisions that are changing? And so there are a lot of theories out there, and of course some of them have been shown to have a lot of merit. Like one thing that can really help influence the way you think is language, right? And so I'm a little bit familiar with language, with Gaelic as well. Not that I speak Gaelic more than very rudimentary words, but I know that, for example, in uh, Irish Gaelic, at least, sentences often start with verbs.
That's right,
And
yeah.
so the way that people think, the order in which people think about things can be different than in other languages where it's often the subject first. So in a lot of Anglophone societies, you always put yourself first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Yeah.
those kind of subtle differences in how you think. But of course, that's something I realized as an adult. So, I think for me, it's just been endlessly fascinating. I personally can't imagine anything else I would want to do in this life.
Yeah.
Um, and the science I'm very passionate about. The writing I'm very passionate about. Not just about science, I think. Writing and art, the creative sides can be very powerful because they let us express things that are maybe sometimes less logical, and things
Mhm.
don't always follow logic. Emotions certainly aren't logical, or don't have to be. And and so I think, yeah, so those things keep me motivated. I've always had a bit of a like learning mindset as well. So I talked about growth mindset, but for me, I'm a lifelong learner. So
Yeah.
I will never pass up an opportunity to learn something new,
Mhm.
go to a conference, talk to people that are doing things that I don't understand so I can improve
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
my understanding of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% because we're always learning. It's great to
Yeah.
keep learning. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because what I find interesting about your books as well is you're talking about enzymes and all that kind of stuff, how the body
Yep.
works, and like your unconscious mind does so much of that, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. So, and we don't have to go down this tangent if you don't want to. So just let me know no at any point.
Yeah.
But so there are theories, or so you can talk about what really is consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and what is your why have we evolved consciousness even,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so one of the one of the theories, and certainly one that I see a lot of merit in, is that consciousness is probably a byproduct. It wasn't intended, like our brains didn't evolve to automatically have consciousness, but in fact, it's a byproduct of the fact that A, we're social animals, and B, we have had to do what's called mental time travel. So, because we are a species that plans for the future, Uh, we have also ended up storing information from the past in order to inform those decisions for the future. But what that ends up doing is it kind of makes you, from this moment here, that's all we have, any of us really, all we have is this current moment. But then from this moment right here, we're able to project ourselves backwards in time, or we're able to project ourselves forwards in time.
Mhm.
And when we do so, we're able to construct these rich narratives, right? Like, you can think back to your grandmother's house, you can remember the smell, you
Yeah,
can remember the colors, you can remember the experience of running down in the farm and feeling the wind in your hair or your
yeah.
skin. So you have these very rich constructs
Hmm.
that your brain is able to store, and that's both in the present and in the future. And so that might be the birth of consciousness itself,
Wow.
and
Interesting.
why we've had evolved to experience things in these multifactorial ways,
Mm.
just so, all in the service of informing our future actions.
Yeah, wow, that's so well explained. Thanks so much for that.
Oh, thank you. No,
Because
my pleasure.
I
I mean,
find
there
it
are
very
other
interesting.
theories. Yeah.
Like the, the way they say your conscious mind can only store 7 bits of information plus or minus two, you know. So like your
Okay.
unconscious
Okay.
mind is, it's very interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're really interested in that kind of thing, so a lot of studies are looking at how do babies learn? Because that's the key, right? Like, how do newborns
Hmm.
um, learn things in the world?
Yeah.
And because they have no presets, nothing, and they just come into the world. And so a lot of it is based on where parents are looking. So they follow the gaze.
Mm.
So they look at their parents, and then they look at where their parents are looking,
Wow. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So so those kinds of things. And then of course there's statistical learning, which very simply put just means that when things repeat, they become important to your brain, regardless of what they are,
Yeah.
right? And so when something keeps happening a certain way, they just become important, and your brain sits up and takes notice.
Yeah.
So anyway, so like I said, we could go down this rabbit
Yeah.
hole, but we
Oh
don't
no,
need
no,
to.
that's great. No, thanks a lot for it.
Yeah.
It's very educational for people listening, same as your books are as well. So thanks very much for that sharing all that with me, with us, with the
No, my
audience.
pleasure. No,
Yeah,
my pleasure. Really. Like I
yeah,
said, I'm a nerd in the lab or in the office a lot, so I love any opportunity to talk to people because I don't get
yeah.
to do that a lot. So thank
Great stuff.
you.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you. And can I just ask you as well, getting back to
Mhm.
your writing as well, do you kind of have a strategy you use when you're writing your when you're writing your book? Did you have a kind of strategy where what I mean by that is
Yeah.
did you work did you do a certain amount of words a day, or what way did you do it
Oh,
yourself?
okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it by words per day.
Okay. Yeah.
I tried to do, because my book, luckily, I think it was very discreet for me because I knew I was going to do these 16 systems, and
Yeah.
so I'd work on. And I think I talked to you a little bit earlier before we started recording about the Pomodoro method,
Wow. Yeah.
which
Great
is
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
which is, I didn't know about it, but it's unconsciously what I was trying to do, which is, we have full-time jobs as first-time authors anyway. Like, I certainly wasn't going to quit my job, which I love,
Mhm.
um, to get into a project which I didn't know before I wrote it, if anybody would be interested in. And so I tried to work on it a little bit every week,
Mm.
right? And so the milestone changed because if I had a really busy week at work, or I had some deadlines, I might just work on it for an hour.
Mhm.
But if I had a relatively light week where I didn't have that many things to do at work, then I would focus more on my book. Now, it didn't actually take me that long to write the book, but one of the techniques, coming back to techniques, which you were asking about,
Yeah.
one of the techniques I used, because it's a children's book, was actually reading it out loud to myself,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and kind of feeling if it sounds right, if the cadence and rhythm of the words would fit together. So I think that's actually the most amount of time that I spent revising the manuscript to kind of get the word just right.
Yeah, yeah,
In some places, the glossary, again, it was not even, in the sense that I started off as a visual and auditory neuroscientist. That's my background. I spent not decades, years of my life doing auditory research in the lab. And
yeah,
so when it came to writing the glossary section for the owls, it didn't actually take me much time because I had the references.
yeah.
It was good to go. So I just had to tweak things a little bit.
Mm.
But then some of the other ones, so one of the animals I talk about in my book are the narwhals,
Okay.
which are absolutely fascinating creatures, and people didn't know almost anything about them scientifically. So so the paper I cite in the narwhal section is actually published in, I think, 2013 or something, very recent, less than 10 years, 10 years, less than 10 years.
Yeah,
Which in scientific years, to give you an idea, people have been studying scientifically and publishing about vision and memory and things from the 1890s, really.
yeah,
The first experimental lab was set up, I believe, in 1870 something. Don't quote me on that, but it was in the 1890s ish, that era. And so, publishing something as recently for the first time in 2013 is really, really recent in terms of research. Uh,
yeah.
and so it was, and it's because the numbers of narwhals are really dwindling in the wild, and they're protected species, so it's really difficult to do any research on them. And so the research isn't conclusive either. But when I was writing that section, I really wanted to be accurate, right? So even though there were only a few papers, I like spent hours and hours trying to search for them and trying to search for if any papers are out there, and
Mm.
trying to find old textbooks and trying to see if anybody's ever written about narwhals ever. And I did find some, but they were not relevant, excuse me, relevant exactly to what I wanted to talk about, which is their sensory abilities. But anyway, so I'm going off on a tangent again, but my point is, like, it wasn't very even with within within systems, but I tried to focus on one system at a time, get it done, and then move on to the next system. So that was my technique when it comes to this. This kind of work is also different because it's nonfiction. So I think the kinds of decisions sometimes I had to make were not creative, they
Mm.
were logistical. It was like, well, what fact do I want to put in rather than when do I want a conversation to stop? Or like, is it dragging on too long? So the decisions were a little bit different, I think, for those kinds of um, or are different for these kinds of books.
I love the strategy you're using there, like especially the one where you're doing. I've heard it mentioned other ways before, but like you doing a bit every week, like an hour
Yeah,
every
yeah,
week is a great one, and then reading the stuff out to make sure that it sounds good. That's absolutely brilliant. Well done for that, Jay.
yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Thank you.
great for
Yeah.
people that are listening as well to kind of who are new at writing or writing books or illustrating. It's a great lesson. So thanks a lot for sharing that with everybody.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, yeah. And for the illustrations,
Yeah,
one of the things I did was to, because I always envision them being facing each other, the animals and the system. And so I would do like swatches, um, and then I would put color combinations, see what popped, what didn't. And
yeah.
so a lot of that, like the art was planned as well. So nothing was just like spontaneous. I'm just going to do random things. But yeah.
Yeah, super great, great, like great strategies there, brilliant. And can I ask you as well, when you're writing the book, a lot of people, how could you put it, would maybe hit a metaphorical wall or
Hmm.
get stuck like writer's block. Did that ever happen to you? And what way would you have dealt with it?
Absolutely. It's definitely happened to me. I think it's a very natural part of being a writer.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, it happened less working on this particular book because I think, like I said, being nonfiction and I had set parameters from the beginning. So it was a little bit different, and I had the artwork, which is also visually like it was inspiring me.
Mhm,
So that's different. But when I've written other things, and when I've written my scientific articles, sometimes I've definitely hit like writer's block, and I have definitely know colleagues who've hit writer's block as well. So one thing that helps me sometimes is because writing is never just writing, right? Like writing also has research, writing has thinking about writing, thinking about plot structure, thinking about what you want to say.
mhm,
Um, and I often find that it's that like being unclear on one of those things is what causes the writer's block.
mhm.
Of course, there are things like depression and other things which sometimes you just need to go get help. Like if people are depressed, they should get help for it because that's not something that people think it's easily resolved, but it's really not. Like it's something that's chemically different in your brain, and it makes everything harder. Even getting up can be harder for people who are really depressed. So get help. That's not what I mean. But like if you find yourself often stuck in a spot, I try to kind of unravel that, right? Like, why am I stuck? Um, well, okay, maybe I'm not really sure what's going to happen there, right? And so then you take a break from writing. Like, I don't try to push myself or push past it, but kind of like, okay, where is this coming from? And is it a plot issue? Or is it like, oh, I don't know enough about it? Or like, I haven't thought enough about that character or how they might react in that situation or something like that, right? So then I might do research. I might go look at pictures. I might listen to a song that I really like, something to like switch up your brain really and get it out. Another thing, because I do a lot of art, you can try like I really love working with my hands. And so anything that like even cooking, right? Like if you take a break, they say the best ideas come in the shower or something when you're not really thinking about it. So really that's the thing I try to do. And I still follow the Pomodoro method that we've been talking about, which is
Yeah,
do a little bit every week,
right.
but that little bit doesn't have to be writing. There's so many pieces to writing a book. If you really don't feel like writing, you can look up agents, you can look up publicity ideas, like how you might want to do a launch for your book and
Mhm.
put a plan in place for that, and that might be the thing that gets you excited about writing again.
Definitely, definitely.
So yeah, just like do other things, don't stop working on it, but work around it and then get back to the place where you're inspired to write again.
Great stuff. No, thanks very much for that. Brilliant. And and can I ask you, where is your books available as well? They're available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah, so they're available on Barnes and Noble, and they're available on Amazon. You can go to my website, which is babycensusbook.com, and it has all of the links. If you're in the DC area, there's a really cute bookstore called Kensington Row Bookshop, which is really charming, owned by European from Barcelona. It has like this giant chess set. I could spend hours there, so I
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
And
Sure.
so my book is there. Yeah, and there's also like art really, and my email is that you're very welcome to contact me if you have any questions about the book or the science or anything. I love hearing from people who've read my book.
Great stuff. Because you've shared me a lot of your links as well. So I'm going to put
Yeah.
them in the show notes as well for people to find. And Like, so thanks for sharing all that with me. That's great.
No, but thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. So we might move on to your favorites as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I'm interested to know what kind of what's your favorite kind of books, Jaya, that you like to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It
that's a
doesn't
great
have to be a
question.
favorite, just one that comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I tend to really like personally science fiction and fantasy. And the reason I like them are because they're usually like a philosophical experiment on what the world might be in
Mm,
a different scenario. And so I love thinking about that, like how people might be different if
mhm.
we were all living in on a moon and like I don't know. Anyway, so
Very
so I
good.
tend to read a lot of science fiction and fantasy. An author, Terry Pratchett, was my favorite. I was very sad when he passed.
Yeah.
Um, Neil Gaiman. I feel like these are all like yeah the really famous authors now, but I've liked them for years in my defense.
Great stuff.
Um, the Yeah, my favorite teenage, like young adult science fiction books were Animorphs. They're the books that I got hooked on when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And the idea of and my I've always loved animals, but that I think that book, which for those of you who are not familiar, Animorphs, a group of kids get like the technology to turn into any animal that they touch, so they acquire the DNA of that animal and
Wow.
then they're able to morph into that animal for like 2 hours at a time. And you know, so each book, so there are five kids, I think five, four or five. Uh,
Yeah.
each book is, and they're short books. It's written in the first person perspective of one of the kids, and they turn into these animals. And then the author had done a really amazing job of kind of like imagining what it would be like to be a mouse and then writing it in first person narrative or imagining what it would be like to be a dog or a dolphin or a tiger and you
Yeah.
know it was really fun to read as a kid, so
Sounds
I
great.
think
Yeah.
those were
Mm.
great books. Yeah.
And would you say that kind of inspired you a bit as well, Jaya, for your
Yeah.
book? Yeah, definitely. It sounds. Yeah.
Well, I think they just inspired me to take an interest in the natural world.
Hmm.
Not necessarily my book, because my book is less
Of course. Yeah.
fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I think it did the job of like getting me interested in like I wonder what it's like to be a dog, or I wonder what's happening in there. Like, what are they thinking when they look at humans? And, you
Hmm.
know, anyway, so
Fascinating.
things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And is
Yeah.
there any non-fiction books? Like there's a really good one that came to mind earlier on when you were talking about mindset. There's I think
Uh-huh.
Carl Dweck has done a great book called Mindset. Have you ever read that one?
No, so I so I read a lot of nonfiction for work.
Okay, of
Obviously, I
course,
read a
yes,
lot of
yeah,
articles. So I
yeah,
tend not to
yeah.
read
Okay.
nonfiction for fun, but I did enjoy, or I am enjoying. There are a few that I do read, and a lot of them tend to be about like um, consciousness or something a little bit more philosophical.
Yeah.
So, and then I believe it's Yuval Harris or something like that. He wrote about Homo sapiens, and it's kind of like goes through the evolution of
Not that book.
humans.
I haven't read it. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
so I've read parts of it. I've not read all of it in its
Yeah.
entirety, but it was recommended to me by someone, and it is definitely an interesting read that I intend to finish someday.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for sharing that. I love
Yeah.
this part of the podcast, so you get some great recommends.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's such a great question too. And I'm glad you asked me that because it took me back to my childhood.
yeah. No, thanks very much, Jaya.
Yeah.
And your favorite film or favorite type of movie as well?
Oh my. I have a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Even just one that comes to mind. It doesn't have to be. Yeah.
So I'm definitely enjoying The Witcher these days. The Netflix show. Movies, I mean, I really like the Titanic for a long time.
Yeah. I'm
No,
with you.
I'm a sap. But yeah, there's some yeah, like there's definitely good movies that I've liked, but unfortunately none of them are like popping in my head right now.
Oh, that's
Star
fine. Yeah.
Wars.
Star Wars.
I
Oh,
like
yeah.
Star Wars a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Mm.
Including some of the animated series, The Mandalorian. They're great shows. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, nice list there. Thanks very much. Yeah.
No, thank
Um,
you. Yeah, yeah.
I,
Sorry if that was like a very
oh,
bland
oh,
answer.
it's great. No, and your
Yeah.
favorite music as well to listen to. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you're gonna laugh at me because I actually love Irish music, which is how I ended up learning a little bit of
Well,
Gaelic, yeah, and visiting Ireland as well. So um I have loved this Irish band called the Coors since I was
oh,
like
what a band.
14.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, they're so good. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the High Kings, I've gone to a couple of their concerts
Oh,
here.
yeah. Yeah.
Um yeah, and then I actually like a month ago I went to see a concert by Kneecap, which is
Okay. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
I had no idea. A friend of mine was like, "I think you'll like this," and it was pretty hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I certainly enjoyed it. So other than Irish music, I listen to Indian music. I'm originally from India. I born and
Mm,
raised
mm.
there. Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
I moved out of India when I was like 19.
Okay. Mm,
Um, and so yeah, I do listen to like some, not a lot, but some Indian music.
mm.
And I yeah, like there's some
Some great
Gaelic
music.
Storm. See, I'm only remembering the Irish bands. Gaelic Storm is fantastic. No, I like jazz. I like Robbie Williams. I like a few. I went to New Orleans a couple of years ago, and a lot of them are these really lovely local bands
Hmm.
um, that make fantastic music. And that was actually the same experience I had in Ireland when I visited. Is everywhere I went, I would buy these little CDs, and they're like these random bands that no one's heard of, but they're just,
Yeah.
good fun. Yeah.
Great stuff. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Yeah.
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 But it's because I do a bit of DJing myself, so like Indian music is very popular over here as well. Some parties I
Oh,
do. So
really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah, yeah, great stuff.
That's
Yeah, no,
awesome. Well, so next time I'm in Ireland, you'll have to let me know where you're playing. I'll definitely come by and listen to some
yeah,
Irish Indian music. That sounds fantastic.
great, Jay. Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So listen, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to the podcast. Thanks a million for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you on. I really mean it for all
Yeah.
your great book is your book is amazing and looks great. But before you go, could I just ask you as well, if you were to give one bit of advice to other
Okay.
authors, just say you had a billboard to write down, a message, what would you say to them just for to keep them motivated?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Um, I would say it's a lot of work.
Hmm.
Because I think that so my experience was that I thought I would write it and I would publish it and that would be it. I really didn't realize how much work goes into marketing it. And I think that's regardless of if you're self-published or or traditionally published, you're going to have to market and sell your book because the traditional publisher is only going to do so much and you're going to have to like go to events, go to fairs, book fairs, talk to people, get comfortable talking about your book to people, which is something I certainly had to learn to do, get comfortable. So the underlying message would be to kind of go into it with a spirit of adventure because you might not always find success. I can tell you I have a PhD in my field, and I cannot tell you the number of people who've ghosted me when I've reached out to them about science, right? And this was not just about like writing in specifically, but even like when I was job hunting many years ago, I was job hunting and I'm like, I'm an expert in my field. And sometimes people just don't bother getting back to you, or you just don't get
Mm,
the success that you're looking for, but you just got to keep at it. and do it with like a sense of adventure. Okay, that didn't work. What's next? Let me see what else I can do, and kind of like have that adventurous take on it instead of getting bogged down by the defeats.
No, that's great advice. Thanks a lot for that, Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, it's just my 2 cents
Yeah,
for
great stuff.
whatever I yeah.
And do you ever listen
Yeah.
to music when you write? Just finally, do you ever listen to music when you write, or do you?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I would say this is not specific, if I may just say one more thing, not specific to writers. One thing, if you can take away one thing, I would say, our brains are amazing, right? Like even when we're not thinking about it, every one of us, like your brain has evolved to make you thrive in your environment. It's constantly making these computations. Like I've been drinking my tea, and every time I take a sip, the weight of the cup has changed. And so my brain has automatically like adjusted how much weight is in there and how to grip it. And so like when people are feeling low, just remember that like people, you're amazing, right? Like when everybody has low moments, everybody has high moments, but just take that away that, brains are amazing. I would love that.
No, thanks so much for that. Great message. Really appreciate it. So what's next for yourself? What's next on the horizon?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I am working with you might get a kick out of this. I have a couple of friends here who are in an Irish band in the US, very good friends. So I'm trying to make a children's song with them in collaboration with them about neuroscience. So children
Mm,
can actually sing and enjoy neuroscience.
wow.
Um, I'm also interested in possibly making this an audiobook, but of course, because there's a very heavy art concept, I've been trying to think
Mm,
about what I would replace the art with. And one idea that I had was using like vocalizations of the animals themselves, like owls, for example, they actually sing to each other in like little duets. And it's quite cute and sweet and I think unique because you can't put that in a book. Um, so another idea I have is to work on behavior. So this is sensory neuroscience, but I don't mean like behaviors like going to open the door or going down to the pub or something, more like sleep. Sleep is a behavior, but it's quite interesting. Some animals um, sleep half a brain at a time, like dolphins and whales, because if they sleep fully, they'll drown because they need to come up for air periodically. Yeah, so there's, I think, quite a few interesting animal behaviors that I could pull at to make like an interesting narrative. So yeah, there's stay tuned and I'll post all of these on my website as they come out or so there's definitely going to be more work on this project.
That's great, Jay. I look forward to it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
when you have
Thank you.
all,
And I look forward to chatting more with you. Yeah.
yeah, and definitely when your song comes out, you got to share, and I'm going to put in the show notes for you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It'll be my pleasure. Yeah.
So Jay, I wish you all the success going forward. Everything you do, like it's amazing. And many congratulations with that great book.
No, thank you so much and all the success with your book as well
Yeah,
and
thank you.
and and your DJing and like I said, I look forward to hearing you DJ someday next time I'm in Ireland. Yeah,
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah. So,
perfect.
Jay, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. And your surname again, just so I didn't want to get it wrong. Sorry, so I can
Vishwanathan.
Viswanathan. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
perfect.
Thanks again for coming on, and thanks everyone for tuning in to today's podcast, Mark's Motivational Podcast. Join us again for another podcast. Thanks again, Jaya. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. It's been a true pleasure and honor to be on your show.
Thank you. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.
Hello everyone, Mark here. Thank you for watching another episode of my Authors Tuesday podcast. I recently published a book of children's stories called The Adventures of Larry Lamppost and Friends. The book began life as bedtime stories I wrote for my own children. If you'd like to purchase my book, follow the link in the description box below. By buying my book, you are also supporting my podcast series for authors, which is giving a voice to writers in Ireland and across the world.